going on, everybody? I'm back with another video. This video is going to be looking at how Manchester City and Pep Guardiola adjusted his tactics slightly to win the 3 points against Brentford. Before we get into the adjustment tactically from Pep, be sure to check out both my books. They're online on Amazon and there's links in the description below. Also, be sure to check out Keyframe. It's how I'm making this video, and there's a link to that in the description as well. Now, in the first third of build-up, Brentford didn't press Manchester City in their high block very aggressively. They went with a 5-3-2, which saw them stagger their midfield slightly to then create multiple access points in a mid-block or a 3/4 press. Now, Manchester City went with John Stones, who played in a fullback role, but he only did so in the first phase of their build-up, and Manchester City will look at how they went with a 5-man midfield structure to then create numerical advantages against Brentford. So in the first third of build-up, Manchester City dropped De Bruyne and Bernardo Silva deeper to create a 3-man midfield and allowed then Phil Foden and then Cancelo on this weak side to progress and create overloads in the half space and in the wide areas, taking advantage of a player like Sterling pinning and then creating a free man through the half space just out of the reach of Brentford's influence in their defensive phase. And we see Brentford pressing from out to in, trying to force the ball into the central areas while using their cover shadows, but the connection was too great for them to effectively press the goalkeeper and cover John Stones. So often Ederson was able to hit a mid-range pass to simply progress past the press. They also staggered their 3-man midfield into a triangular shape when they did advance into their 3/4 press to then create multiple access points and dual roles against the Manchester City midfield to try and make up for this numerical disadvantage that Brentford was at. So as we see here, we have the players using dual roles and creating multiple access points among these players, as well as the two pressing players using their cover shadows to block these players as well. Now, when Manchester City progressed into Brentford's half, their back line became a very dominant back three with John Stones on the right and Laporte on the left. This gave them the ability to advance past the Brentford forwards through the half space using their wide central defenders, and their aim was to pull out one of the 3 Brentford midfielders, allowing then space to be created higher up the field. And as we said before, Brentford went with a 5-3-2, and this became very clear in their low block. Now, the back three was slightly different for Manchester City, and then the big difference came with Rodri as the single pivot, as he usually is, but then we have Cancelo joining the attack as an inverted attacking fullback, Phil Foden as a false 9, Bernardo Silva and Kevin De Bruyne overloading the right half space, creating a 5-man midfield structure with Rodri as the lone pivot in this game. So this often gave Manchester City a lot of fluidity and often saw De Bruyne using his common movements to drop just outside of the opposing team's block to then become a deep lying playmaker in the right hand half space, and the full width and height was created by 2 wingers of Sterling and Mahrez influencing the back line and joining the attack to even create numerical advantages against Brentford's back 5. Laporte and John Stones would often come in the same line as Rodri to then decrease the passing distances to their more advanced players, with Cancelo inverting and increasing his height, and then De Bruyne joining now Gundogan, who was subbed in the second half in the more advanced line. And as we see the versatility from these midfielders and their decision making to then change their height based on what the game required allowed them to influence and progress past these midfielders and the Brentford defense in different ways. So as we see, we have our back 5 with our 3 central defenders not directly occupying any of the advanced Manchester City players. And we have our 2 forwards who then cannot cover the distance from the central defenders of Manchester City, often leaving the weak side player free to then progress in the half space. So by these Manchester Cities dropping deeper and using a 4-man attacking structure, they outnumber the midfield line of Brentford to then create a 4-man attacking midfield position and creating numerical advantages. This often allowed for movement from these players via pinning and opposite movements and rotations to then access space, whether it was between the lines or just outside of the defensive block. Now the Manchester City team also could use these players higher up the field, now with Mahrez coming in and Bernardo Silva fanning out into the wide area. So when the height of these four players increased, Rodri was then able to get more time on the ball against a very deep low block, and with wide and high wingers, the four-man midfield in the attacking positions would narrow the back five of Brentford, allowing Rodri to then switch the ball with a diagonal pass and a mid-range switch to then either exploit the free man via Sterling on the weak side or get Sterling on an isolated situation to use his 1v1 qualities. Now, Brentford in possession, they went with their usual back three and played very direct, and had it not been for two individual mistakes leading to a penalty kick and then Kevin De Bruyne's goal, Brentford might have been able to get more out of this match. So in their 3-5-2, Brentford went with a back three and a three-man midfield with two forwards pinning the back line of Manchester City. They also played very aggressively with their wing backs, allowing them to get numbers forward and contest for second balls more efficiently. Manchester City went with more of a front three, with players pressing each of the central defenders, and then a three-man midfield with two holding midfielders of Rodri and Bernardo Silva protecting the press of their front four players. De Bruyne would often take up the number 6 for Brentford or their holding midfielder to then force play back to the Brentford goalkeeper, which often happened much of the time. And that's where we're going to wrap up the analysis. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.